Hello everyone, and welcome to our channel, History of the Ancient World. Today, we're journeying back in time to ancient Greece, not to witness epic battles or marvel at grand temples, but to sit at the feet of the thinkers who shaped Western civilization itself. We're talking about the philosophers, the lovers of wisdom whose questions and ideas still echo in our lecture halls, our political debates, and even our personal reflections. Why should we care about these ancient figures? Because they were the pioneers of thought. They were the first to systematically ask the big questions. What is reality? How should we live? What is justice? What is the nature of the soul? Before them, the world was explained largely through myth and divine intervention. The gods were responsible for everything from thunderstorms to human emotions. But a new wave of thinkers emerged, proposing that the universe could be understood through reason, observation, and logic. This was a monumental shift, a revolution of the mind that laid the groundwork for science, ethics, and politics as we know them today. Our story begins not in Athens, but in the vibrant coastal city of Miletus in modern-day Turkey. Here, in the 6th century BCE, a man named Thales looked at the world and asked a simple yet profound question. What is the fundamental substance of everything? He observed the importance of water for all life and concluded that water must be the basic principle, the amache, from which all things originate. It might sound simplistic now, but think about what he was doing. He was attempting to explain the complexity of the universe with a single, naturalistic principle without resorting to gods or myths. He was, in a sense, the first scientist. Following Thales were other Milesian thinkers like Anaximander and Anaximenes. Anaximander proposed an undefined, infinite substance he called the apeiron, as the origin of all things, while Anaximenes suggested air, which could condense to form water and earth, or rarefy to become fire. The specific answers are less important than the method. They were engaged in a rational debate, building on and critiquing each other's ideas. This was the birth of philosophical and scientific inquiry. As we move through time, we encounter another giant, Pythagoras. You probably know his name from the theorem about right-angled triangles, but he was so much more than a mathematician. For Pythagoras and his followers, the universe wasn't made of water or air, but of numbers. They believed that mathematical relationships underpinned the entire cosmos, from the harmony of music to the movement of the planets. They saw a world governed by order, proportion, and harmony, an idea that would profoundly influence later thinkers like Plato. The Pythagoreans also lived a strict, almost monastic lifestyle, believing in the transmigration of souls and the pursuit of purity through intellectual and spiritual discipline. Then there's the enigmatic Heraclitus, who famously declared that you can't step into the same river twice. For him, the only constant in the universe was change itself. Everything is in a state of flux, a dynamic interplay of opposites. Day and night, hot and cold, life and death. He saw the world as an eternal fire, constantly transforming. Opposing him was Parmenides, who argued the exact opposite. He claimed that change is an illusion. True reality, he reasoned, is one, eternal and unchanging. What we perceive with our senses is deceptive. Only through pure reason can we grasp the true nature of being. This clash between Heraclitus' world of becoming and Parmenides' world of being set up one of the central debates in the history of philosophy. But the real intellectual explosion happened in 5th century BCE Athens. This was the golden age of Athenian democracy, and the city was a bustling hub of commerce, art, and ideas. In this environment, philosophy turned its focus from the cosmos to human beings. The key figures in this shift were the sophists. They were traveling teachers who offered practical education, especially in rhetoric, the art of persuasive speaking. In a democracy where public speaking could make or break a political career, their skills were in high demand. Thinkers like Protagoras, with his famous statement, "Man is the measure of all things," challenged traditional notions of objective truth, suggesting that truth and morality were relative to the individual or culture. This was radical and to some dangerous. And it is in response to the sophists that we meet the most iconic philosopher of them all, Socrates. Unlike the sophists, Socrates claimed to know nothing. He didn't lecture or charge fees. Instead, he wandered the streets of Athens, engaging people from all walks of life in conversation. He would ask them simple-sounding questions. What is justice? What is courage? And through a process of relentless questioning, known as the Socratic method, he would reveal the inconsistencies and ignorance in their beliefs. His goal wasn't to provide answers, but to make people think for themselves, to examine their own lives, because as he famously said, the unexamined life is not worth living. This made him many enemies, and he was eventually tried and sentenced to death for corrupting the youth in impiety. Yet his martyrdom only magnified his legacy. Socrates himself wrote nothing. Everything we know about him comes from his students, most notably Plato. If Socrates was the questioner, Plato was the system builder. Deeply affected by his master's execution, Plato became distrustful of democracy and the world of the senses. He developed his famous theory of forms. He argued that the physical world we perceive is not the real world. It's just a shadow, a poor copy of a higher spiritual realm of perfect and eternal forms or ideas. There is a perfect form of a chair, a perfect form of beauty, and most importantly, a perfect form of the good. The philosopher's job is to use reason to ascend from the shadowy cave of sensory experience to grasp this true reality. Plato founded the Academy, one of the first institutions of higher learning in the Western world, where he taught and wrote influential dialogues on everything from politics in the Republic to love in the Symposium. And who was Plato's most brilliant student? None other than Aristotle. While Plato looked to the heavens, to the world of forms, Aristotle brought philosophy firmly back down to earth. He was a polymath, an insatiable observer of the natural world. He studied biology, physics, ethics, politics, logic, and art. He disagreed with Plato's theory of forms, arguing that reality is found in the concrete objects we see around us. He believed that everything has a purpose, or telos. The purpose of an acorn is to become an oak tree. The purpose, or ultimate good, for a human being, he argued, is eudaimonia, often translated as happiness or human flourishing, which is achieved by living a life of virtue and reason. Aristotle catalogued the forms of logical argument, laying the foundation for logic for the next 2,000 years. His school, the Lyceum, became a center for empirical research. The influence of these three, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, is almost impossible to overstate. They are the foundational pillars of Western thought, but philosophy didn't stop with them. After the conquest of Alexander the Great, who was himself tutored by Aristotle, the Greek world expanded, and new philosophies emerged to address the anxieties of a larger, more uncertain world. This was the Hellenistic period. One of the most prominent schools was Stoicism, founded by Zeno of Citium. The Stoics taught that the universe is governed by a divine, rational principle, the Logos. We cannot control what happens to us, but we can control our response to it. The key to a good life is to live in accordance with nature, to accept fate with tranquility, and to cultivate virtue, which they saw as the only true good. It was a philosophy of resilience, duty, and inner peace that would become incredibly popular among the Romans. Another major school was Epicureanism, founded by Epicurus. Often misunderstood as a philosophy of hedonistic indulgence, Epicureanism was actually about attaining a modest, tranquil pleasure. Epicurus taught that the goal of life is to achieve ataraxia, or freedom from disturbance. This is done not by chasing wild pleasures, but by minimizing pain and fear, especially the fear of death and the gods. He argued that the world is made of atoms, and when we die, our atoms simply disperse. There is no afterlife to fear. The ideal life for an Epicurean was a quiet one, surrounded by friends, away from the chaos of public life. And let's not forget the cynics, like Diogenes, who lived in a barrel and famously told Alexander the Great to get out of his sunlight. The cynics rejected all social conventions, wealth, status, and reputation, and advocated for a life of extreme simplicity and self-sufficiency, living in accordance with nature, much like a dog, which is what their name means. From Thales questioning the nature of water to the Stoics finding peace in a chaotic empire, Greek philosophy was a dynamic, evolving conversation that spanned centuries. These thinkers weren't just dusty figures in a history book. They were pioneers who gave us the very tools we use to think critically about the world and our place in it. Their questions about ethics, politics, reality, and the good life are still our questions. Exploring their ideas is not just an academic exercise. It's an invitation to join a great conversation and to continue the timeless quest for wisdom. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the minds of the ancient Greek philosophers. If you found this exploration as fascinating as we did, please hit that like button and be sure to subscribe to History of the Ancient World for more deep dives into our shared past. Let us know in the comments which philosopher resonates with you the most. Until next time, keep questioning.